The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys and Brew Bar.
The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. Of the How Dare You Awards, joining me, you know him by now, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Hit me, Tom.
Remember, this Friday, Ben Franklin and Aretha Franklin will be here. Saturday is the field trip to Babylonia, and very important, do not do your homework without wearing headphones.
Oh, bless George Carlin.
That was especially for you, because I know how much you love George Carlin.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, there were a lot of quotables to choose from.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the big surprises going back to these movies is, for better or worse, most of the comedy in these movies is verbal.
Right. Yeah.
Which, when you think about, how visually striking a movie series it is, it's kind of unexpected.
Yeah, that's true.
But it really is. The jokes are there in the script rather than on the
sight
screen.
Gags or yeah, right.
I mean, they all have that, but what stays with you is these incredibly well constructed verbal gags,
mm-hmm.
which for a comedy that has a reputation for being kind of brain dead,
yeah, right,
is fascinating
and interesting.
Yeah, I guess the same argument can be made about Beavis and Butthead, right? I mean, there's a distinction between the level of intelligence of the characters versus the people who are behind the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that here too.
And there's a part of me that wants to kind of cry out because we've recently done the 93 sequels, so we've been talking about things like the Hot Shot series and Wayne's World 2, and you're talking about movies that I think some critics or some people discount as dumb automatically,
yes.
And they're anything but dumb.
Right.
And I think that
it's really more about the subject matter.
Yeah, exactly. Or the characters.
Yeah. It's the characters, not the people making the media.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fascinating.
Well, it's been a bit of a treat going from the 93 sequels to this. And I guess I should say at the outset we're calling this a trilogy of trilogies. We're gonna do a few trilogies in a row.
That's right, which is very exciting, and we'll restrain ourselves from naming the last two of those trilogies at this point, but to let listeners know that that's in store. But going from our last series to this one. Sometimes we like to take a palate cleanser, but I feel like we've been we've been circling like vultures around the early 90s for so long now.
That's true.
That we need to find a way to wean ourselves off. And so this is a really nice way to do that, because we can use what we've learned about the early 90s, particularly in early 90s comedy. We can put it all to good effect. But we can also move on and talk about a movie that was made as recently as 2020.
Yeah. And that's one nice thing about this particular series, right? That we do get to wean ourselves off because there was such a long space in between sequels.
Yes, absolutely.
If we'd started this podcast, or maybe even started this series any earlier, it might have been part of a single sequels.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, so of course, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the Bill and Ted's movies, or the Bill and Ted movies. So we're talking about Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and Bill and Ted Face the Music. And this is our ranking and declaring episode. We have to rank these two sequels and declare them good or bad.
We do.
And let me, of course, as always, ask you right off the bat, was this a difficult task at all?
It's fairly straightforward for me.
Me too.
But what I would say, to inject a possibly false note of mystery and surprise,
Oh.
is that it was clear upon rewatching these movies how I felt about them, but my perception of how I felt about them before rewatching them was a little different. And I think that has everything to do with how I first saw both movies.
So
like
you had seen both of them already.
I have, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, my sense of what I might do in a ranking or declaring episode is different from what I eventually did, but not so different as to shatter the earth, shall we say.
Well,
how about you?
not difficult to rank at all.
Okay.
That was fairly straightforward for me.
Yeah.
Good and bad with at least one movie. It's, the kind of, I don't want to give too much away, but
Yeah.
but not as easy, I'll just say.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good teaser.
Yeah. I mean, do we give any play to the fact that, what do you think of having two sequels so far apart?
I mean, it's...
Because this is sort of a...
You
This is
can't
something that's
underestimate how important it is. I think, maybe there are some film genres out there that haven't necessarily changed that much in 30 years. Comedy is not one of them. The different ideas of what comedy is in these two movies is staggering to me.
That I agree with completely. Yes.
They have a totally different idea of what people might find funny.
And structure.
Yeah, and I'm sure. I mean, there are kind of technical and creative questions about how film has changed in that time.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it.
These
because...
two movies almost polar opposite.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that that they have they cover the same characters and some of the same actors.
Right. Yeah.
But crucially, not all of the same actors.
So
in roles that you really want to have the same actors there.
Yeah.
For political reasons.
So what do you make of, just speaking generally in sequeldom, what do you make of this thing that's happening lately where we wait decades and get a sequel?
That is a really good question that I wish I prepared better for, but my...
Sorry.
No.
I snared you in the trap.
It's a really good question. Yeah. My ill-informed, off-the-cuff opinion is that it's a uniformly bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
But
can it never work?
No, I don't think it. No, that's not true. I don't think it can never work. I think it all depends on where you left off with
yeah, okay.
Yeah, where you left it off, and that's really interesting in terms of this franchise.
This franchise, yeah.
Because they give you some options about where you can go.
Yeah.
And at the same time, no options.
Which also has, I haven't written my pitch yet because you're kind of left with that, that same idea, options and no options, and you think to yourself, what the hell am I supposed to do? Which we've been confronted with before, but
there's a huge missed opportunity here, and we can talk about this in more detail when we talk about the movies individually.
See, I think so too, but so I'm interested. Yeah, you're tickling my taste buds, my sequel taste buds.
I won't necessarily name it then, and we can wait on it. But I think there's a huge missed opportunity to how you, given the types of genres and subgenres that this series feeds off. Mm-hmm. There's a real missed opportunity to do something with timeline here.
Right, yeah.
Given, that time travel is so important to the series. I don't feel like they're mining the gold here in terms of what you can do with that in terms of chronology and in terms of giving you a new or different story. You totally have storytelling means at your disposal to do something interesting with the timeline that never really comes to fruition.
In any sequels or
No. I mean again in this big gap between.
Gotcha.
There's yeah. And you know, I don't think it's I mean history just makes it so hard to go back to the well here.
Right.
Partly because of how specific a moment in time the early 90s is in pop culture.
Well, and I think
and also I think the second part of that is like how well comedies were made in the early 90s, as we've seen, that it gives you so many obstacles
right
to reviving this 30 years later. So in this case, I think it's a fallacy that you could successfully do that.
Right.
But there might be circumstances in which, you know, I mean, I don't think the Westerns changed that much in 30 years. You know, there are other genres which...
Right, yeah, that's interesting.
A bit more robust, but comedy is just, you know, it is so tied to changing attitudes and cultural norms that you can't... You just can't go back to the well without making a number of changes that kind of question why you're even bothering to
doing it
story in the first place.
That's an interesting point, because it's not as though for this latter sequel, for the 2020 sequel, it's not as though they hadn't been trying for a while.
Okay.
Both lead actors were interested. They kind of kept coming back to it. They kind of kept waiting for a script that they thought was worthy of it.
That's also a red flag.
Right.
I think if you've gone through that process and not made a movie, just stop.
Right, yeah.
Because that's also
because if you couldn't hit the nail on the head,
the origins of.
If you couldn't hit the nail on the head for at least a decade, that might be a sign and a signal.
Yeah, and that's the origins of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, almost to a T.
Sorry.
That's exactly the case. Everyone was interested for
Yeah.
At some point prior to the actual movie being made, it never happened, and for some reason, none of the people involved took that as a sign that it should never happen.
Right. Oh my goodness. Well, that's all very interesting to me. Now,
yeah, no, it's you ask a very good question, and I will continue to ruminate on it.
Yeah. All right.
Because it will come up again.
Now, is there anything else that is on your mind before we start ranking?
I don't think so. No.
All right.
No, I'm ready to talk about. I'm ready to talk about these two movies.
And you said your ranking was easy for you, too, as it was for me.
Upon rewatching the movies.
Oh, that's okay.
Back to back, and in the right, for the purposes of, in order, back
and
to
for
back,
the purposes of the podcast.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Once I did that clarity, but I think my idea of this was muddier before I did that.
Well, I'm both excited and extremely nervous because there's only one way to look at this for me, and if you go in the opposite direction, my head will cave in. But
your head will explode like so many Bill and Ted doppelgangers in this series.
In the series, correct. All right, now do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Oh well, since you offered, I'll let you go first.
Lovely. The top of my list is there's a huge long distance between number 1 and number 2 for me. The top of my list is Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. For me, can't be argued.
Right. Okay.
But I know your love of threes, so.
But remember the trilogy exception.
That's true.
So which was it? That's the thing. That's what makes this interesting, because it's the Tom Stewart rule of 3, but there's an asterisk, and the asterisk is the trilogy exception.
That's
so
true.
We don't know which way it's going to go when it's a trilogy. And we're doing 3 trilogies in a row, so watch out.
So who knows what could happen?
Yeah, it's a roller coaster. Well, I would like to deliver my ranking in the cadence of the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure Saturday morning kids cartoon TV series, if it's all the same to you, if you'll allow it.
Indeed, I will.
I'll encourage it. It's Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Nice. I think I feel about
like you. I would struggle to take issue with anything you just said. I really would.
I think I feel about this movie, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, like you do about Wayne's World 2.
That's interesting.
I think I just love a simple story with big ideas.
Mm.
And this this movie has it.
It hits both those briefs.
Yeah.
In an almost textbook way.
I had not seen it in a long time, and I was...
Me neither.
I was shocked. And I always remembered really liking the movie. But I think some of the movie passed me by or went on, over my head in terms of what they're doing with philosophical ideas. And, this movie should be taught at film schools. This movie's fascinating. I love this movie.
I guess this isn't one of the movies that you struggled good or bad for, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, I did not.
Well, I mean, in terms of ranking, because at least I still haven't declared whether I think this is a good or bad movie. I think the when you compare you've got a straight compare and contrast between two movies.
Yeah, you really
Which if those two movies, if one of them is clearly better than the other, and it is, it's very easy to sort of see, the technical and creative elements of the movie are superior to the other. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've got here. But the other part of at least my ranking process is to think about it as a sequel, and what how successful it is at being a sequel.
Sure.
And I think although maybe my perception was that this wasn't that interesting a take on the Bill and Ted formula that was established in Excellent Adventure.
In the first, yeah, right. No,
they are they're superficially similar, but they're doing something, especially in tone, very different here. Mm-hmm. And very interesting and stimulating.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that this is another one of those like early 90s movies that we've looked at recently, which are self-aware sequels.
Yes, right.
The discussion of themselves as sequels is built into the format of this movie.
Right.
In a way that I did not remember.
Yeah, I don't think I did either. And
obviously, I did remember, but I didn't think about it as being I remembered the jokes or the references, but I didn't see them as sequel references.
As sequel references, exactly. And the other thing is,
I'm brainwashed.
Because I was going to say,
we're doing here.
Because we're doing this podcast, never before in my life had I thought so much about the movies as sequels
Exactly.
You kind of it was almost binary. Is it good? Is it bad?
But they're doing it deliberately. I
But
have no
yeah.
doubt about that. They
So
are very deliberately
so my
referencing.
past self looking at movies just on a general good or bad. Now with the scope of this podcast that we've been doing for well over a year, you know,
Basically, since Bill and Ted Face the Music came out.
Yeah, exactly. I assume
There's
that
your barometer, people.
I assume that you, like me, are starting to dream in sequeldom. Like, so that's just sort of where my life is now, and so you have to look at it as a sequel too. And I don't think it doesn't disappoint on that level either.
But you know, I think we made the observation when we did the 1993 singles that at least half of those movies have literally no awareness of themselves as sequels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still, I mean, it's getting to be the norm that you make reference to what you are as a franchise movie, but it's by no means guaranteed. So it's still impressive when you see it.
Yeah.
So spoken so clearly as it is in Bogus Journey.
Mm-hmm.
That they are the second movie, that there are certain conventions that they're drawing on, certain precedents that they're drawing on.
Right.
It's you know that's another point of contrast with Face the Music, which is amazingly in 2020 when we're supposed to be sophisticated and, you know, postmodern.
Yeah.
Their idea of what a sequel is essentially a kind of remake.
Mm-hmm.
Of the, you know, a loop back to the original movie.
It loops back to the original, but it also feels like one of your everything soup pitches.
Well, that's certainly the case.
You know?
Yeah. Except I got the sense that...
And I say that with great admiration, sir, but...
I got the sense that apart from one specific carryover, which you sort of can't not have, especially if the actor's up for it, that they were almost willing to sort of kind of de facto take Bogus Journey out of canon at times.
You think?
I don't think most of what happens in Bogus Journey, like 90% of what happens in Bogus Journey, has no bearing on Face the Music.
I mean, except for the kids and death.
That's right, Kids and Death. That's it.
That's really it.
that's another great album. You've got a good album title there, Kids and Death.
Kids and Death.
Wild Stallions, Kids. It could be another one of those Wild Stallion albums, Kids and Death.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those are the only two. Those are the only two narrative points that matter. So you basically, but actually the kids don't.
Well, and I don't want to start getting too deep into it yet.
I know, but they retcon that, so it's really only death.
Yeah.
That you can't retcon because, I mean, there are some strange choices made in Face the Music, but if you were to not revive the character of Death as played by William Sadler, you basically should be run out of
town
run out of Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly.
Frankenstein style, with villagers holding torches, right?
Yes.
Especially if William Sadler
get him
wants to come back, as he clearly did.
Right. Because he gives an Oscar nomination worthy performance in Bogus Journey.
Bogus Journey.
That funny. He's so good.
And if you told me that he filmed his scenes for Face the Music a day after he ended filming for Bogus Journey, I'd believe you.
It's a note.
Oh, okay.
I have that exact note. My exact note is William Sadler has not aged a day.
No.
It's incredible.
With the exception of sounding a little bit more like Werner Herzog than he did in Bogus Journey.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same performance.
Well, by the nature of us doing trilogies, the cat's out of the bag. So second on the list for both of us is, of course, Bill and Ted Face the Music.
But the only thing I want to comment on there is that inferior almost by design.
Yeah.
There is a kind of a melancholy baked into it that means it's automatically going to be less worthy and valuable. I think they play a really dangerous game of kind of acknowledging the fatigue within the frame of the movie to the point where the movie is basically feeling fatigued.
You think? Like, but you're saying it was purposeful?
I'm saying that no, not purposeful, but the idea of, and this is some problem with so many modern day franchise movies that, you know, of long running franchises. They want to sort of make the point that, you know, that the characters are older and that there's a melancholy about them, and that they're failing to recapture their youth.
Right.
But you're not really giving us as viewers a reason to enjoy watching these characters, because so much of that is tied up with that youth.
Yeah.
And that vibrancy and that lack of melancholy. You know,
so
it's a dangerous game.
Right, because in that way
I'm too old for this shit. Then why am I watching?
You're dooming yourself. You're kind of Yeah, that's
because
interesting.
It's on TV.
But I like we shouldn't get too deep into the weeds on that, cuz obviously I want to talk about it when we get to the movie.
Yeah.
Now I said that Bogus Journey outpaces Face the Music by miles for me. Is it the same for you, or are they closer?
What in terms of what are we talking? Good, bad now?
I was talking in terms of ranking.
Yes.
Like my Bogus Journey is a country mile ahead of Face the Music.
Oh no, I
okay.
Yes, 100%.
All right, well then, good, bad. I'm gonna venture out onto the thin part of the branch and say we're both calling Bogus Journey a good movie, right?
We are.
All right.
And I'm interested to hear how enthusiastic you are about it, because I think it's probably a great movie.
I do. I think it is a great movie. I really do. I think it's.
I think I'm just too. Go on.
I just think it's an astoundingly great movie. I was shocked by how great it was. Watching it again.
I had the same feeling, but I don't know if I'm just so enamored with early 90s comedies at the moment. With the movies we've just done.
Right.
And even when I just think about non-sequel movies from the early 90s, like Groundhog Day, or just like the way comedies from this era are able to sort of move fluidly between high and low culture, between different kinds of comedy, to sort of like to straddle the line between, smart comedy and dumb comedy,
right.
It's like, I don't think every era of cinema does this.
Well, when you think of a Bill and Ted movie, the last thing you think you're going to see, I mean, probably the first thing you're thinking in your head is, oh, that's a Twilight Zone reference. But there's like a German expressionism involved as well. You know what I mean? And that's the last thing you're going to expect to see from a Bill and Ted movie. And it just gobsmacked me when I watched it. Oh, I loved it.
William Sadler's entire character is
Seven
a
Seal.
Pastiche cum parody of an Ingmar Bergman movie.
Right. I mean, it's just amazing.
He's like one of the main characters in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's not even a case of.
But to have that,
if you need to know the reference, it's a case of it gets funnier the more you know.
The more you know, exactly right
about the joke. But you don't need to know that.
But you don't need to know it because he's hysterical.
Which is what I mean about fluidly moving
Yeah.
between different kinds of audience, different kinds of media. It's just. Like, when I'm out of this early 90s bubble, I will tell you whether this is a great movie or not. I strongly suspect it is. I tell you what, in genre terms, as a comedy, it is laugh out loud funny more often than it is not.
Yeah.
And I will go out on a limb and say, there is one joke in this movie that is among my favorite in comedy cinema of any type.
Whoa, I'm very excited.
A joke that I laughed as loudly and vigorously watching it this time as I did when I first saw it on VHS in the early 90s.
Now, well, no, I'll save it for.
Yeah, let's.
I think I'll save it.
I'm not gonna reveal it now, but I mean, you said you were astonished. I was shocked that because you go back to movies from the younger period of your life and you think that can't be as funny as I remembered it being, and it absolutely was.
Yeah.
Everything I thought was funny about it at the time was confirmed.
All right, then. So, brass tacks time, I suppose it is.
Yeah.
What about...
This is really the only... This is really the only note of suspense that we have.
Exactly. So
we're like, it's like Hitchcock, but we've blown up the bus.
Hitchcock, director of that black and white movie, Birds.
Oh, God. Or was it Wes Craven? Yeah. Well, you know that story, right?
Tune into the other podcast, everyone. If you listen to the How Dare You podcast, you'll know that I'm not an idiot that doesn't know what I'm talking about. I just work with one.
That story, Hitchcock said he always regretted letting a bomb go off in one of his movies. He let a bomb go off in his movies, and he realized you shouldn't. If you have a bomb in a movie, you should never let it go off. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying.
Not even the nude bomb.
The first 3/4 of this episode is us letting bombs off on buses.
Right. Right.
So this is it. This is the ticking time bomb underneath the bus seat of the one bus that didn't blow up.
Right. All right, friend. So Bill and Ted Face the Music. Is it a good movie?
No.
Yeah, for me too. And I honestly feel a lot of regret having to say that, but there's just...
It's not a particularly bad movie.
Yeah, but it's bad enough to be bad.
Right. I think, and I
But you know what's interesting to me?
What is?
Normally we talk about this when we talk about each individual movie. It has a, Rotten Tomatoes. What's interesting about Face the Music is it's like at 86% or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes, which is an astonishingly high percentage given the movie I just watched. But it also came out in August of 2020.
Right.
And that's the reason.
And never released into theaters, right?
It was, but I mean, we're talking about weeks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It was available on digital.
It was already available digital, yeah. I mean, they'd already released it digitally, so it came out in theaters, but it was already out.
Tremors style.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I do find that interesting because the one thing that's really interesting about Bill and Ted as characters is their optimism.
Oh, you're taking the words right out of my mouth. I think this is what sealed it.
And I think I'd kind of forgotten about that. And that was so lovely to see. I really enjoyed that. And I think their optimism was what carried that particular movie, Face the Music, into sort of a stratosphere of the 80 percentile because people were so glum because they've been locked in their houses for 6 months. It didn't come out until August of 2020.
But I think the movie's glum.
I do too, but
in looking over
a lot of critics' reviews of it, this movie's unabashedly this, it's unabashedly sweet, it's and I really like that, and we need that right now. That's what a lot of the reviews were like.
Oh, that's a complete illusion.
I agree. I just think that they were looking into it.
Yeah.
They saw something else into it that's not quite as much there as they believe it is.
But it's there in the brand, so they convinced themselves it was there.
Exactly right.
And I had a similar experience because
I'm relieved, by the way, that we're on the same page.
Yeah, so my only trepidation going into this about saying that it was a bad movie is that I half saw this on a plane in 2 parts while supervising a 3-year-old and quite enjoyed it.
Uh-huh.
But I realize now that's it should be no surprise to you. I realize now that's really more about the circumstances in which I watched it.
Yeah.
And listen, if I'd have known what a good traveler he turned out to be, I would have just gone, do your own thing.
Yeah.
Go play with your buttons. Eat your pat of butter.
Daddy's watching Bill and Ted.
Order a Bloody Mary. Do whatever the fuck you want. I'm going to watch Bill and Ted Face the Music. But I did that planes thing where you watch half of it on the way out and half of it on the way back.
Oh,
have you ever done that?
No.
That's the best thing. You go, because all the time you go, is it still going to be there? Is it still going to be there? You go, it's there, it's there. So I'm excited about that.
I've done something, a different form of transportation where, I take kids backpacking during the summer, and you get maybe halfway through a movie on the bus on the way up, and then you start watching the second half on the way back. Yeah.
Right. Oh, but that's...
But in that case, I have the DVD, so I know it'll be there.
yeah. Right. But that's the thing. There's always an element of risk, because what if they change their entire program?
Yeah, right.
Mid vacation, and you're stuck with having to watch fucking, I don't know, Bolt again. It's always Bolt. Why is it always fucking Bolt? I don't want to see that movie again.
I'm done with Bolt.
I'll watch again. Bolt? I'm not going to watch again.
I'm done with Bolt, damn it.
I'll rewatch Up, whatever you want.
That's great.
So I think I kept checking in. I was checking in with it constantly and watching it in such a fragmented way. I was like, oh yeah, it's hitting all the notes.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess is what those critics are saying as well. Like, oh, it's giving us, it's hitting the notes.
They did.
But now watching it all as one experience, it does not hit those notes. It gestures maybe towards those notes occasionally.
Right.
But it is not hitting the notes at all.
And it's chopped full of ideas, but then it discards those ideas just as quickly as they come.
Yeah.
It never truly lands
it's not a good...
on an idea that it should be.
And I think that there's a larger issue here about how bland and corporate it feels as a piece of filmmaking.
I think that's represented. One of my notes is because that feels represented in how they use CGI.
I mean, everything. Yeah, CGI. CGI. The use or lack thereof of music.
Yeah.
Just digital digital cinema in general.
Backgrounds galore.
It just feels like a company movie.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you can't do things with that aesthetic, because Twin Peaks: The Return looks like that, but that's a piece of art television.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a different thing when you're talking about David
but he
Lynch,
specifically he wants to talk about corporate the stifling state of corporate America.
Mm-hmm.
Through the way he's filming it. But that's not the point here. In fact, the point is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Big problem.
Style and content are diametrically opposed.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
And it's not taking any stylistic chances in the way that Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey did.
Right. And
if you want to do a straight comparison.
In a straight comparison, when you look at some of the effects that they use in Bogus Journey, which some people might think look cheap, but it matches the tone and intent of the movie itself. And so it always works.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would, everything in Face the Music is smoother, but that to me looks cheaper.
It does look cheaper, exactly.
That smoothness looks like a fucking corporate training video.
Yeah. Give me a matte painting over a digital background any day. All day long.
I've never said no to a matte painting. Even if you just want to give me one to hang up in my home,
yeah,
I'll take it.
I
Find the
like
wall
to take
space.
matte paintings out for a late night cocktail.
Yeah. If I have to remove a bed, I'll find the wall space.
All right. Well, we have ranked and we have declared.
We have.
Anything left for you?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I'm definitely interested. Doesn't sound like there'll be much dissent on this one, but nonetheless.
No. I mean, we certainly seem to be on the same page.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about Face the Music, though, in terms of what I do like and what I don't like. And to me, just take one more pass on the script. You really could have done something so interesting with that movie.
But that goes back to Crystal Skull as well. It's the same shit. It's like this is not in and of itself a bad idea. You just have not figured out how to do it.
Yeah, maybe.
Or I don't know. Is it about compromise? Is it about? Is it about we have to get a Bill and Ted movie out? No one's going to be happy with it.
No, I don't think that's it. I think we can only do it if it's going to be great.
But that's what you said about Crystal Skull. But that's not what it looks like.
But I'm saying, but like with both examples, they waited a super long time to get exactly what they wanted, to do it exactly how they thought it would be successful, and in both cases, they're just abject failures.
Well, I mean, the only part of that I disagree with is that neither Lucas and Spielberg got what they wanted on that movie. I don't know if it's a similar situation here, where I don't know who the creative driving forces are.
See, I thought...
Spielberg was not happy. Lucas was not happy.
See, I thought Spielberg was happy.
No.
And I thought Lucas, from his experience with Star Wars, was resigned to the fact that it doesn't matter what you do, we won't be happy no matter what.
Well, there might be an element of that, but Lucas wanted aliens. Spielberg didn't want aliens, so they went with interdimensional beings. And that's kind of the story of the whole movie, right?
Yeah.
It's like no one gets what they want.
They went the middle of the road. But
we get a movie out.
They went the middle of the road and made the least interesting movie they possibly could.
Right. And I don't know, like... It doesn't feel like this movie has a creative force behind it. I think that is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a piece of AI...
Because and the real problem is when you stand it up...
Feels like Dennis put it together.
Well, when you stand it up next to Bogus Journey, that's a movie that does feel like there was a captain at the ship. There was somebody who said, these are the ideas I want to explore through these characters.
Yeah.
And it just works. I mean, it just, but it feels anchored to, I don't know. I don't know if we're talking the producer or the director or the stars themselves, but whatever went on in Bogus Journey, somebody had a big idea that they literally just, carved a path through the ice for.
But that's also interesting because you could argue that it's more surprising Bogus Journey is successful.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is the road less traveled.
But it has, I mean, what it has.
Whereas Face the Music is playing it safe narratively.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is remembered,
Bogus Journey has a
celebrated,
vision. It has a vision. It has more vision than any of the three movies.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
It's an extremely metaphysical movie.
Yeah.
That's what struck me this time.
It's wow. So, I'm excited to talk about it, which we will do next.
Which I think, if you're going to relate it to sequels, you could say, there is value in in going in a different direction with your sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, playing it safe is not always the best option.
Right, yeah.
But no one seems
Well,
to
I
have learned
mean,
that lesson.
how many times have we talked about big swings, and this movie takes a big-ass swing,
Right.
and
But
then the ball hasn't landed yet.
But one that justifies itself. I mean, that's always the thing.
Yeah.
We say it's a big swing, but we all suffer. And this is a big swing where we get a more interesting movie out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have to rake over Excellent Adventure again.
Right.
And I don't how bold is that? Is this what sequels should be? Is this like because it doesn't seem like a lot of sequels are this bold in their, I can think of a handful of them like Return to Oz or Babe Pig in the City that have gone, fuck what we did,
right?
This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
but so it's like a handful of them. Yeah, interesting.
All right, friend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Where do you put these movies? How do you rank them? Are they good or bad? Let us know. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. Coming out soon, we'll be talking about it, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. We'll be back. Say goodbye, Tom.
Talk to the hand.
Excellent.
Speaking of a script that needs another pass, I'd take that one out. And yet somehow William Sadler makes it
work.
Yeah. He shouldn't have to, though.
Right.
That's the problem. I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beers. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer. If you're anything like me, you spend the majority of the day wondering whether you want coffee, beer, or wine. Whichever way you fall, Brew Bar has you covered. Located in the heart of 3rd Avenue Village in glorious downtown Chula Vista, California, which is also my neck of the woods, Brew Bar is a coffee shop, bar, and eatery rolled into one delightful package. Tim and Alex run the place, and let me tell you, listeners, these guys know their coffee. And after you've been in their company, so will you. They turned me on to pour over, and it's literally all I drink now. If for some crazy reason you don't want to try the best coffee in the world, they've got espresso drinks, all kinds of teas, and even coffee cocktails. You heard me? Coffee tails. And we're just getting started. Bottle service on craft beer and wine, alcoholic and caffeinated potions, an all-day food menu with plenty of vegan options. All served up in an atmosphere hip enough to know you're getting the best quality, but not too hip that you feel the need to drive to 7-Eleven and get a bucket of brown swill. Brew Bar. It's the best place to be for beer, wine, coffee, and tea. And if you go, you might even see me.